My name is Mimi Rosenberg, and I've been at WBAI Radio for many, many years. And I have the pleasure of doing the Wednesday morning show, which is engineered, and my co-companion there is Michael G. Haskins, who is in the back. And for even more years, with Ken Nash, we do the labor program. And there is no other station that has ever thought about, and we have the oldest, longest running working class partisan show in the history of this country. So it's great to have worked with Ken Nash for all these years. And that's another component of BAI and BAI Rising. We are not antagonistic to BAI. We want to take it forward to continue to propagate and advance and develop its sensitivities, such as the ones that you heard from my two brothers here. And there's another person who has had something to do over the years with WBAI and is similarly working with us on WBAI Rising. And I like to think of him these days as a kind of full court press. And that means he's our southern tier, having migrated to North Carolina these days. But all that means is we have an opportunity maybe to bring Reverend Barber closer to us. But in any event, Bernard White is really, in many ways, the heart and soul, and has helped develop the station in its most formidable periods. And if you don't realize it, certainly there would not be a Democracy Now! Or an Amy Goodman, which I hope people listen to and like, without a Bernard White. But Bernard White also takes the political analysis, particularly as it relates to African Americans, particularly as it relates to Africa, particularly as it relates to Southeast Asia, and the African continent, far further than my sister does on Democracy Now! That's just a gentle critique and concern. And not to mean that I don't adore the program, but I'd like to introduce Brother Bernard White.
I'm here. I came up from North Carolina to be here to talk about a radio station that I love and that I owe a lot to. I'm extremely disappointed with what has happened to WBAI. I think that it's a shame because quite a few people worked very hard to make it the kind of station that you used to listen to. How many of you listen to WBAI a lot less than you used to before?
Oh my goodness.
Let's count those hands.
And there's a reason for that. And I'll get to that in a little while. But one of the, I started at WBAI on November 22nd of 1980. And my reason for going there was because I used to go to a lot of demonstrations around the city. I was involved in a lot of different activist groups. And whenever I got, sometimes I know that I was right there when stuff had broken out. And I would run home to see how they did it on the news. And they never talked about what really happened. It was always the people who were demonstrating were the folks who caused the riot, caused the disturbance, and it was always the police. It was always. And I said, well, maybe it was because the person wasn't there, and I wanted to go someplace where I could tell them exactly what was happening. And BAI was that place. When I got there in 1980, Samori Marksman was the program director. And he had a vision. We used to talk all the time about how to build an institution, because that's what you do. When you go to WBAI, it's about building an institution. And one of the things that we took, and I didn't take the lead on this, but one of the things we often talked about was that it had to be, and Janice K. Bryan will remember this, it had to be organically linked to the community. And that's why BAI was so successful. That's why so many people listened to it, because it was indeed organically linked to the community. When they fired me, And that's a very interesting story. But when they fired me, they also fired you.
Yes, they sure did.
And that's why you don't listen. Because it wasn't about you anymore. It was about individuals who benefited from cleansing WBAI. Because that's what Pacifica did.
That's right.
When I was terminated, they terminated 8 people. I had their names down there. 8 people.
What year was that?
This was in 2009. They terminated 8 people, all black folks, all Latino, who were in positions of authority, who, I mean, they just got rid of them. And they all had the same reason. We were all incompetent. We all didn't know what we were doing. With me, I supposedly intimidated staff. And did all of the stereotypical things about black males was affixed to me. And one of the things that worried me too is that when there was a first coup that took place back in 2000, and during that coup, me, Amy, and Sharon Harper were terminated. And folks got upset. They came out and they picketed and boycotted and threatened and all kinds of stuff. And then, we won that. Dan Coughlin was a part of that too. We won that. This time, they fired me again, but Amy wasn't there. So I just went off. I just left. I mean, I was gotten rid of. And I said, racism among the left is something that we have to discuss.
That's right, yes.
Because I know that if Amy was fired with me too, I'd probably be back at the job right now. Because, it's this black guy. I mean, there's so much about this story that is extremely interesting that you should, one day we should sit down and talk. Now, some folks think we shouldn't go back over the history of what happened. But I believe that you cannot move forward unless you go over that history of what happened. And you have to be as accurate and as honest and as open about that history as possible, because it is necessary to understand what has happened. Because there are a lot of falsehoods that have been put out. A lot of people who have taken over the station. At one point I thought that they didn't know what they were doing. But they do it so well that they gotta know what they're doing. I can't believe that they could be that incredibly stupid.
Well,
We're talking about, I mean, to me, this is the 21st century. There's computers here. There's a computer. That operates from a computer. Young people are all involved with computers. WBAI had an opportunity to get to catapult itself into the 21st century. And they said, no, we don't want to do that.
Well,
What we want to do is take out a loan for $1.8 million. And that they can, with no, they got into debt because they don't have an audience that is sufficient enough to pay the bills. So what they do, they take out a loan for $1.8 million. Where's the audience is going to pay back that loan?
exactly.
It seems to me that they put themselves in a position where BAI cannot survive.
Set up your business.
It's right. It's set up to fail. They're going to default on the loan. Pacifica is going to be in trouble, and we have to be realistic about this. Pacifica, you know what? When Samori Marksman died, he died suddenly, and we went to the Cathedral of St. John the Divine in the middle of the week. How many of you were there? The place was packed, standing room only, in the middle of the week. And Easter week, right. I was coming out with Major Owens. And when we got outside, Major Owens says, "This is not good." I said, "Why is that, man? All these people came out here, this is beautiful." He said, "No, this is not good." When they see that people have come out in these numbers for this little obscure radio station in the middle of the week, they're not going to like it. And I said, wow. About 7 or 8 months later, the first coup took place. They took it over. I mean, coincidence, maybe, but I think he was on the mark. The people who are, the worst thing that happened to WBAI is local station boards. It is when they put in these local station boards, which under the name of democracy, it is not democracy. You got what percentage of the listeners vote in these elections? Less than 10%. And you know who the 10% are mostly? All of the crazies make sure that they get out and vote. And then you have on BAI a multi-millionaire who backs the crazies because he can manipulate them. And there's some good people on the LSB, some really good people who are very much concerned about the radio station. They struggle, but they don't know how to fight. Can you imagine if Muhammad Ali was going to fight Sonny Liston, and Sonny Liston made all the rules? Sonny Liston would come out and say, "Look, Muhammad, don't hit me in the face. And don't hit me in the body. All right? Okay, let's fight." Which is what has happened. The good people have to understand that you cannot fight based on the ground rules laid out by these folks. You got to figure out I've been saying for the last 10 years at every meeting, and John can attest to this, that there needs to be a forensic analysis of what Pacifica has become. A forensic analysis of what the LSB has become. Because when it started out, it never fulfilled what it was supposed to become. So if you're going to war, and it is a war, because there are people in Pacifica who, there are people in Pacifica who don't want WBAI to be around, at least not the WBAI that we know. And they're actively trying to make it into their own image. They want to move it from where it is on the dial down to the other end of the dial, because they think that that's where it should be. Forget what we think. Forget what our listeners are interested in or involved in. It's really a shame, because a lot of work was done. Janice K. Bryan is back there. Michael J. I think that what has to be done is that, first of all, there has to be that analysis. You can't go to war if you don't know what the other army is doing. And it is a war. You have to recognize that it is a war, that there's information that our communities need. For some members of our community, WBAI meant life or death. When I started there in 1980, and I used to say, the police would come in and just snatch black guys off the street. I had folks who called me up and said, "Come on, man, that doesn't happen." And I would get angry at first until I realized that, no, it doesn't happen in your community. But this is a regular practice in my community. Now, what's to be done? I think that analysis has to take place. I think that folks have to decide what it is that they want, and then do everything they can to get what it is that they want. Robert's Rules of Order is not, you're not going to get it following Robert's Rules of Order and sitting down in these meetings, making resolutions and trying to pass motions. That's not going to do it. And you gotta engage the community. One of the faults is that many people in the community know absolutely nothing about what happened. They know WBAI has changed. They don't know why. They don't know how. They know they don't listen as much as they used to. You gotta engage the community. You gotta go to various communities and talk about what's happening at the BAI and why there's a need for the kind of BAI that appeals to all the members in the community. It is extremely important. This is an important institution. As I said, it has meant life and death to a lot of people. I've got letters from folks who thank me, and it's not me. I was part of a group. I was no better than anybody in the group. Everybody contributed. Janice K. Bryant, for instance, used to come down from what street you live on, Janice? Don't give them the address. What street? Up in Washington Heights in the morning, every morning, and be there by 5:30 for no pay, because she wanted to get the information out. And that's the kind of folks you have to respect. Because one of the problems is that the producers at WBAI are so interested in maintaining their own spots that they don't protest. They don't, as long as I got my hour, my 2 hours, then everything's cool, But I'll leave it at that. I don't want to go too far.
My brother is one of the consummate activists. He works frequently with Daniel Vila on La Voz Latina, which is one of the important programs and one of the things that is still why we need to take the foundation of BAI and carry it forward. Brother Carlito?
Which I have been listening to since my youth. And we have to put it in the proper historical context, such as preventing African Americans from learning how to read and write, invading Puerto Rico and teaching Abraham Lincoln and George Washington in English to Spanish-speaking children, and creating a generation of illiteracy. There are many ways to look at the history of how to prevent information from being mastered by people of color, such as eliminating and attacking Black and Latino academia in the United States. Oh yeah, there's a decline in Black and Latino academia throughout the United States right now, which is secretly being kept. That's how we have to put what's happening to WBAI. We have to put it in that context. How is it that they aim to keep Black and Latino people stupid? That is really their goal.
Exactly.
Okay? How to keep us uninformed. A lot was said, which I embrace, by the previous speakers on how to challenge what's happening right now. Well, the answer is very simple, and it's been in front of our faces throughout history. We got to scare the shit out of them. We got to fight back. There's no other way to put it. Because all of our rights, the supposed rights that we have today, didn't fall out of the sky. They were fought for. Okay? It's very simple. Those that are now corrupting and capitulating to the mainstream in WBAI, they're part of the tug of war of trying to eliminate free speech. Brother Bernard said about racism on the left. I took that and I was trying to register it. I like to give a different perspective. What is the left is relative. Okay? Could we really consider them part of the left? Or are disguised right wing disguising themselves as leftists? Okay? Today I discovered that the Left Forum eliminated the panel on Palestine. You might as well eliminate the panel on the U.S. colonization of Puerto Rico. See, that shit don't piss me off. We have to look at it very, very seriously. You know, this is not an academic question. This is very much part of the life and death struggle of our people. By eliminating, corrupting WBAI is part and parcel of every other aspect of our oppression. The main thing that they fear is to have Black and Latino people having access to media, having access to books, having access to history. And that is precisely what the battle is. Their greatest weapon is not those aircraft carriers they got in the sea. Their greatest weapon is to keep us stupid and have our minds controlled. And that is the context in which some of these fools are aiming to destroy WBAI. And I don't like to get into conspiracy theories, but goddamn, you are doing the same thing that the rulers want you to do. So I want to know how much you're getting paid. Okay? You know, because if you look at the history of the CIA, haven't they manipulated radio and media in other countries? What is to say that they are not doing that here in America? Okay? So when we deal with this question of WBAI, it has to be put in the context of what is it that we need. We need a new movement, a fighting movement. You know, this thing cannot be, you know, kept in an academic discussion. It is a question of life and death. You know, we would not be able to discuss in La Voz Latina what they are doing to Puerto Rico right now, where disease is becoming increasingly another aspect of colonial oppression, where 100,000 and a half Puerto Ricans have been forced to migrate to the United States as a result of the neglect of FEMA, which was created not to hand out water, but was created as the civilian component to martial law.
Yes. All right.
These are things that we need to you know, propagate, and we cannot do it if we don't have the means to do so. You know, so I just like to stress on the point, you know, that it's good to oppose, but we have to talk about, you know, in this discussion, how is it that we're going to fight back? You know, because we cannot fight back in the most polite way. There's nothing wrong with doing it in militant struggle. You know, because WBAI, those corruptors of WBAI, they're not leftists. Not in the long shot. Not when you're working and you're doing precisely what the rulers want you to do. Thank you.
Now, it's interesting to me that BAI has never been more commercial than it is now. And what do I mean by that? It goes from a history where it dealt with indigenous issues. It went from a history where there was a struggle all the time, but there was an intrusion of Afrocentric thought that helped build a movement and inform a community and indeed the voices of the oppressed communities. BAI was a home for the Latino perspective across the diaspora, Puerto Rico, the Dominican Republic, all over South and Central America and so on. How much is there now? And yes, it was a voice, as I said, the oldest one for partisanship, for people who were fighting day and night, having given their blood, sweat, and tears to build this country, to unionize, to control and democratize the unions that they did have, and yes, collectively to assume state power, because that's really what the fight is about. Now, having said that, I'm just going to interject. I said, wait a minute, commercialism, BAI? BAI has a model of operation that is called Fund Drive. And the Fund Drive, which now takes place every 4 weeks for 5 weeks of time, gets us less money for more intense commercialism and drives away listeners in a way that has been building for years. Who controls our station now financially? And who profits from it? A non-for-profit? Who is controlling the airwaves on WBAI's Fund Drive?
Gary, no.
Come on, say it.
Gary, no.
Gary Knoll,
And Steve
a for-profit marketeer of products for people who largely don't have in this damn system a system of health care. They don't have access to health care. They don't have actual health care and are in a stage of absolute abject desperation. And I'm not going to go into a critique of what he calls alternative medicine and whatnot. However, be clear, he is a commercial entrepreneur whose products are made in non-union settings, who makes a profit off of every single one of the things that he offers to us. $250, my sisters and brothers, for a filter to travel with because you're worried about the water. You're not in Flint, Michigan, but their water. This is what BAI has become, almost nonstop. So the model, it is a commercial model, and it has meant that he has made millions off of free publicity, 10, 15 hours a day at a time. Now this is, so for people who say, wait a minute, we are a non-for-profit, but we are in the hands of a cronyist method of making money that is benefiting a commercial entrepreneur, including a Christine Blasdale, with my God, you're depressed about your life, so I'm going to give you face cream. And, I mean,
or juice.
it's horrific. It's a perversion. Now, let me tell you this. The fact of the matter is we are in the hands of commercialism, and we are starving. And we accrue debts because we have an antiquated model for maintaining this imperative political vehicle. And that's exactly what this form of media is. It is an aid, it is an asset to the voice of resistance against the forces of repression and for every single community issue that is there where people seek to just live. Just to live. That's what BAI has been the platform for, and that's what it continues to aspire to.